Alright, that was a good nap. Right, let's get all of this out and head back to business. Oh, I got a lot of stuff in here. One, two, three, 4. And goodbye, Mr. Cole. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to BiCo SMP Season 2. It is episode 7, and today I'm back from the dead. Yeah, so it's been a very long time since I've been on the BiCo world, and a lot of stuff has happened in that meantime. I have logged on every now and then and played a little bit, but overall I haven't been doing all that much as part of the series, and a lot of other stuff has happened. So the aim of today's episode is to first off look at all of that new stuff that showed up, and even some of the stuff that is even newer than the stuff that I was previously looking at, and also to catch you guys up with what's happening with the server and where we're going to be in the near future. So that's all very interesting, so let's get straight into it. A couple things have happened on the BiCo server while I haven't been making videos. Now, there was kind of a big lull in server activity between about December and February of last year. Things have slowly picked up in the past few months, and generally it's looking a little bit more alive going into Season 3. And of course, I should probably mention why I'm talking about Season 3. For those of you who aren't watching the other members' videos, Season 3 is going to be ending on the 15th of November 2025. That is the last day that the server will be open. Drawing up to that closure date, we will be having a presidential election. This will decide who is the high leader of BiCo going to Season 3, and will make some story things that may or may not happen in that season occur. Now, my role as a member of the server is to vote, and I have to decide on who is going to be my choice for the election. Now, of course, I could go with this wonderful circus tent for Mr. Moss. This is quite nice, very elegant, and it's a very classic axolotl build. If you've ever watched any of her content, you will know that this is very much like them, and definitely does not have anything sinister in the bottom. I don't know what you're talking about. I know nothing about that. As for other members of the race, we have a couple others. If you look over here, we have the wonderful, I believe it's called, if I remember from watching their video, I've fallen into some leaves. Now, if you do watch his videos, which I highly recommend that you do, just to get a general idea of what's going on, this is Boomerang's base, and he is running as Joseph Stalin because he has unrivaled humor of a 13-year-old, and this is apparently what we're doing now. Not necessarily looking particularly great on the outset as a candidate for the presidential election, given that he is parading as somebody who will probably run a totalitarian regime. But Mr. Moss over there is quite literally a piece of moss with a sign on, and while you can get very attached to some moss blocks with signs on, they tend to not make very good members of the electoral body. The third candidate that I am aware of, if I remember all of my candidates properly, is buried under the fungus over here, and that is none other than Loom. She is also running. I don't think she has any, headquarters set up, but their main campaign seems to be to make very dark and dingy places under biomes and have the only iron farm on the server that has probably made as much money as my farms have just by existing. As far as I'm aware, that's a pretty neat wrap on pretty much everything that has been happening on BiCo insofar in terms of events. Other than that, nothing a lot really has happened. It's been quite quiet. We've had a couple newer members show up, but they've not really done much. And they're going to stay off the server until Season 3 properly kicks off so that we have, more people to invite like a proper server rather than just inviting them midway through. I mean, who would do that? Who would possibly do that? Now, I only have some limited time left on that server, and to be honest, while I haven't really done all that much this season, I would like to just, at the very least, finish up my base and make sure that I'm kind of happy with everything that I've done in the world once we move on to the next one. So there's kind of a checklist of things that I would need to get finished in order for the base to be complete, so to speak. And the idea is that over the next couple of episodes, however many I make during this time, I will aim to get all of those things done. And the first item on the list is that we're going to be going back to a shop that I was building, and we're going to be finishing up the interior of that. So let's head over there. Now, over here in the shopping district, this is the shop that I was working on. Some of you may remember, I don't know if I put it in the video, it has been a good year or so, but this is the rocket that Axolotl built as her rocket shop. It is currently empty. However, as a joint kind of business that we were doing, I built this building here, which is a kind of vehicle assembly building that was kind of designed to be a futuristic complement to Axo's rocket so that we can kind of set up a joint business venture. Now, I have done a little bit of work here since I last recorded. Again, I'm assuming that I actually did make a video on this. I don't think I did. And if that is the case, then sorry. But what I want to get done is the interior in here. And it's not going to need a lot to be done. I was kind of thinking of cutting the ceiling in here off by about 5-10 blocks so we don't have to deal with all of the space in there. But we're going to be filling it with a few like industrial things and some parts that are being taken out of the shop to the launch pad to be supplied to the rocket in order for the rocket to be fueled and sent off onto whatever futuristic voyages that it will be going on. Part of that work will also include making sure that the roof is less of a mob farm so that our customers can actually enjoy the shop. All right, I gathered up some materials. I have them in this shulker box here and a few more in my inventory in case I need them. Shouldn't really need all of that much for this build. It's going to be fairly simple, and I'll see you in the time lapse that I'm about to do. Done. This is the interior for the most part. I know it's kind of, this is a bit big. I think it was originally smaller in my initial design. We also need to add a back door in here, which I forgot how I was doing it, so I'll leave that for later. But for the most part, this is the store done. It's kind of a higgledy-piggledy mess of all sorts of stuff. This is designed to be things that are being taken out on the road over to be taken onto the ship. And most of the other stuff in here is kind of just random piles of junk and maybe some things coming down from the factory up above onto this railway to be distributed. This here over here is where we're going to actually sell items. I actually forgot what this store was meant to sell in the first place, so that's going to be fun to talk to Axolotl and remember what that's all about. But once we get that stocked, we should be all good, and the store will pretty much be ready for opening. And yeah, that's good news because that means we've actually managed to get a shop open this season, which I know I did the... Oh, that's a good point, actually. I should probably go check on my profits at the other shop. Flying into the shop from here, we can just have a look and see how the sales are doing. Over here, not a lot, not a lot, not a lot. But over here, ooh. Yeah, I think I had this chest cleared out from the last time I was over here. And, oh, yep, got a whole bunch of diamonds here as well. Stones... Cobblestone's very popular. Generally, it's not fun to mine. And nothing on smooth stone, all right. But that is another solid 13 diamonds made. Not bad going at all. And I definitely wasn't forgetting how to press keys there. Breaking news. I'm going to have to go away from whatever we were doing in the video before because other things have happened on the server. Now, as part of the presidential election, we're doing sort of debates. This was an idea I suggested and has been taken up. And what it means is essentially members that are going to be running for presidential elections will be doing debates, and they'll be explaining what their policies are and trying to persuade people to vote one way or another. So the three that were interviewed were Boomerang, Dwaj, and Mr. Moss, and they kind of all had a debate. The main focus of it being Boomerang setting out his plans for what he calls the quote-unquote Starlingrang. And in order to keep fairness between all of the different candidates running for the election, I'm now going to give a very brief overview of everything that Boomerang wants to do in his part. So Boomerang is going to be focusing on what effectively is a form of communism. And of course, communism means free stuff, and there is a fair amount of that. Tools and armor from villagers, melons, blocks, and diamonds. Not everything will be free, as we like having some resemblance of an economy, and it would just be a pain otherwise to manage. Some of those items will be subsidized. The government will pay in part for these, but players will still pay some as well. Elytras, tridents, maces, and rare books will come under this category. I'm not too certain about the rare books. It would seem that we're not really having training halls on the same scale, but I guess there's going to be an ethics committee on that, so that's what we're doing. Shops will be a thing, but they will run slightly differently to those of Season 2. This season had a shop tax where you pay a set amount for opening a shop, but Boomerang would abolish this rule and instead limit the shop size, a 20 square area that you can build a shop within, and you have to stick within those bounds. There's no vertical height limit, so you could go as high as you wanted. So it's kind of like the limit that existed within Hermitcraft Season 7, but it's a flat out limit rather than a per diamond amount. On top of that, items will have a fixed minimum price that decreases as the season goes on, so that items are more affordable when they are more plentiful. At least that's the general idea in theory. Collective shops are also going to be a thing. Before the season, we're going to allocate certain items to multiple people, say rockets or stone, so that more than one person is allowed to sell these items. Because we're not full-time creators, we have lives outside of this. We can't dedicate as much time to it. And that normally means that in the middle of the season, there's only 1 or 2 people online. And that can mean that getting items becomes tricky. So this should hopefully mean that more people can buy the items they need without having to go and get them themselves during those dry periods. Now, diamonds are going to be kept, but they're going to be taxed heavily. Boomerang said that all of them will be taken in by the government, but there's a couple other points along here that seem to totally contradict that idea, unless I'm not really subscribing as heavily to what's going on here. But in other words, these diamonds are partially redistributed. Once they've all been collected in, they're distributed evenly. And these are added alongside mine diamonds, which the government will be investing in so that other people can have more diamonds. The idea is to make everybody more equal, obviously. Now, some of the diamonds are going to be put aside for things like investments, so making sure that government infrastructure can be paid for. And he also talked about bonds being a thing as well. So you buy a bond, it costs 64 diamonds per bond, and the value of that bond increases as diamond reserves go on. It's a very serious system. Personally, I think it's a bit too serious for a 10-player small YouTuber SMP, but that's just my opinion. But it's very proper and cool to see offered. As for the government itself, there's going to be a spot for it in Season 2. Now, the spot in Season 2 wasn't actually intended. This was just the shopping district, but that's kind of where it was built anyway. And this will have all of the important bits, tax office, your election hall, your presidential office, the grand hall, whatever. He will have a government with himself being the president, of course, and a handful of lackeys and a vice president. They won't do anything. They're kind of just there. You don't get paid for the position, which makes sense because if they paid people, they might actually do something. So you've got to make sure they don't do anything. And there is also going to be public infrastructure. Of course, there was on this server, I can show some of that now, but there isn't a lot of it. It's not very good. But the idea is that there will be a proper, strong public infrastructure built. Possibly. Tasks are the system that he's introducing where a player can pick up a task and build a infrastructure project. So, for instance, episode 5 of my Let's Play on this server, you will have noticed that I did a task for the government as well. I built the end portal, and I'm still pretty proud of that end room. I think it could be a little more elaborate or large, but for the size that I'm currently dealing with, that was perfectly fine. Last but by no means least, just a general overview of things that he wanted to introduce. there was going to be bans. So there's a ban on the Nether for the first 3 days, a ban on the End for the first 2 weeks, and a ban on mega bases for the first month. In all honesty, I think this is probably the best thing that he came up with of all of these. I think when you have servers like, if I'm being honest, BiCo itself, where you have one person who builds a giant mega base and then everybody else is still building dirt huts, and they kind of see this massive mega base that was built in like 2 days. I think, man, I'm never going to be able to make anything. People kind of get motivated, they stop playing, and then the server ends up dying in 3 weeks. And of course, because we want to keep the server alive, the idea of banning mega bases, to me at least, seems to make a fair amount of sense here. And yeah, that's pretty much a summary of everything that Boomerang wants to introduce. Let me know what you think. So to summarize the other candidates, because I'm really running out of time on this video, Twaj is dark and mysterious. Mr. Moss got hit in the face and is now unable to run in the next of the election. And Loom, I genuinely have no idea what they are doing, but I'm assuming something kind of like Boomerang, or they're just not going to be there. But what that means is that now that I have all of the information on my candidates, it's now time for me to go and vote. And I think I've already made my decision. I'll explain over at the election hall. Flying in over here to the election hall, we can marvel at the wonderful buildings that Axolotl made, and I'll explain my decision. So of the 4 candidates that actually started in the election, only 3 of them are still actually running. Mr. Moss, of course, as you saw earlier, was critically shot and is unable to run in the election and is unlikely to be around for next season. And that leaves Loom, Twaj, and Boomerang to actually have any say in this. And Loom honestly hasn't really said anything. I had to ask Twaj, and she hasn't really got any clear idea for what to do. And while Boomerang does have some stuff that I ultimately don't agree with, like all of his, like not necessarily story things, but his more laborious elements to what he's trying to do, which I personally disagreed with, he did actually say that you don't have to take part in those should you not want to. Of course, it's encouraged to take part in some things like Shopping District will have to be like, you'll still have to do that. But overall, staying on the server doesn't require you to stick to everything he says. And for that reason, he is who I'm voting for. In fact, I already did it because I had to go back and re-record this clip. Audio file decided it was bugging and and the sound was really bad. So yeah, that's why I don't have that piece of paper and I have a piece of rotten flesh instead. I'm not going to put that in the thing. I was considering doing that. Maybe to Mr. Moss. I might do it to Mr. Moss, actually. Don't tell Axo that I did this, although Axo is going to see this. But anyway, that leaves the voting, and it's time to go and give you my final thoughts on Season 2. So, my thoughts on Season 2. Overall, I would say it probably wasn't the best season I've had. It had a lot of gaps in it. There wasn't a lot really going on. I've only had 7 episodes out, including this one, which generally isn't good for a SMP series where you'd hope there'd be more episodes. And I took a year and a 3-month break to go do some game engine stuff. Now, a lot of the time I want to be able to say, yeah, this was a pretty good season, but I do have to admit that this wasn't a very good season for me or for you guys who like my Minecraft videos. That being said, there are a few things that I would like to address about this season specifically that I think made it objectively worse that I want to make sure that we understand before we go into Season 3. The first one is going to be quite obvious when I do some explanation. As you can see over there in the corner of the screen, if I turn around and show you, we can see my wonderful little tent. And under it, my sneaky little bunker that took up 2 whole episodes. This was a pretty fun project, and honestly, I kind of wish that I kept more of this style going forwards. I think what I ultimately ended up doing was a little worse, and this kind of building was actually pretty good and probably should have stayed my style for the rest of the season. Now, the base I'm standing on, the wonderful Axolotls, this is quite frankly one of the best bases I've ever seen on like any SMP I've been part of. And I say this with full confidence. This is a brilliant base. Axo, you absolutely outdid yourself. I know you're going to be outdoing it again next season because I've seen what you've posted already. And honestly, I'm amazed that you have this kind of energy. Like, how do you do this? Genuinely, how? But yeah, this base, really cool. It's something worthy of Hermitcraft, I would say. Definitely worthy of any big YouTube series because this is a whole handcrafted biome, hand-placed trees, all of this done in survival, all of these resources gathered by hand. Very, very impressive piece of work. Here is my base. My base was excellent if you needed some string or gunpowder or rotten flesh or sugarcane in a pinch, because I had a bunch of that just lying around, because the 2 things I built this season was a mob farm and a sugarcane farm. And there's also a slime farm, but like I don't think anyone ever used slime, including myself. This is not a very good base. And what that means is that I want to improve next season by having an actual base. Now, there's a reason behind why my base ended up looking like this. The reason is that I didn't really have a plan going into this season. I kind of figured, oh, I'll just build it on the fly. I'll decide what I want to do. And what ended up happening was I wanted some farms, so I built some farms. And then I had no idea for how to actually incorporate the farms into, a base. So I ended up just leaving the farms out in the open, and you ended up with a not very nice looking build. So next season, I will be having a base, a proper base. I will be separating my industrial district from the place I live and do all my trading and all the other things. Secondly, I want to have a style going into that season. I don't want to build like I do on my Let's Play, where I say, oh, we're building, like a medieval harbour town, and then I build 2 buildings that are very much not medieval harbour town whatsoever. They're cool buildings, don't get me wrong, but they do not fit the style, and that is something that I don't like and I want to fix. So, next season, I have a style. I won't be revealing it now. I've probably indicated to what it is before, but I will be building in a specific way to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. Of course, I will have an industrial district. They're very important parts of any base, and they mean that I don't have to dress up buildings that are actually farms. But I think that building these so close to Axo's like actually magnificent thing here, just not good enough. And last but by no means least, I don't want to upload more. I think one of my biggest limitations with this season was the fact that I just didn't know what to do for episodes. I thought, well, I want to focus every episode around a farm. I did that for like half my episodes. I had the sugarcane farm episode, I had the mob farm episode, I then had the wither skeleton farm episode. I never ended up making a video on my slime farm or like half of the other projects that I did on the server. And that's something that I think, while it fits a video format, probably isn't a good idea to plan around the farms. I need to think, okay, what do I need to do? If I want to make an episode every 2 weeks, because that's fairly manageable on top of everything else I'm trying to do, what do I need to do this week? What do I need to do next week? What goals am I building towards? When do I need to gather resources? When do I need to record? Things like that need to be planned out properly so that I actually have something to present every 2 weeks, instead of deciding, oh, hey, I actually need to make a video in the 3rd week so that I can then break my 2-week streak and then wonder why I don't make episodes a lot. Of course, that would change going into the summer, because, of course, then I don't have to worry about, having any responsibilities. And, of course, things will quieten down in April/May, because I will be having life-changing things going on. So, sorry. But yeah, so that's kind of my summarization of the 3 points that I wanted to make here. I think going into next season, I want to have a build style. I want to stick to that build style. And I want to make sure that you guys actually get a video every 2 weeks, so that I don't feel like I'm cheaping out by not bothering with any of that. But that does bring me to one last thing. Given that it's the last episode, I did want to come back to our base and just think about how far we've gotten. This is how we started the first episode, with iron armor and nothing really of note. And here we are now, decked out netherite, 3 skeleton horses, I genuinely don't know how I got those, and a whole bunch of fishing books, because I too got into fishing. A similar time to Grian. I also have a bunch of rockets here that I left behind for no reason. I'm taking those. I just want to say, before I go into the next season, thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for all of the support that you gave me, and this series has really boosted my channel. I hope that this can gather even more people, because I genuinely do like doing these videos. Even though I don't like the editing part, I'm trying to get over that. I have found that this video was genuinely really fun to edit. For the first time in a long time on YouTube, I genuinely had fun making this video, even though it has been slightly stressful, because I have to get this out in like 3 days, which is plenty of time, because I'll be able to edit it in like 5 minutes if I actually bothered. But again, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next season of BiCo. Goodbye.